Good morning to you, and the weather is very cold, but I believe that this morning's conversations are going to warm you up your heart in one way or another. My name is Priscilla Regina Deloga, and welcome to the MILDMAY talk show this morning. Now, looking at Uganda being one of the countries in the sub-Saharan Africa with a very high maternal mortality ratio, estimated at around 336 deaths per 100,000 births. In 2020 alone, approximately 800 women died each day from preventable causes related to pregnancy and childbirth, meaning a woman dies every 2 minutes. Now, while some of the major causes of maternal deaths are amenable to prevention, such as hypertension, the vast majority of the contributory factors to maternal deaths include social factors such as low socioeconomic status, poverty, ignorance. You do have the social culture barriers to accessing antenatal care, the poor personal attitude to health care, and the self-risk perception. Transportation logistics are also in there, and delay in referrals from other health facilities. Our panelists this morning are going to help us dissect where we stand as Uganda in dealing with this. And welcome once again to the MILDMAY talk show. It is the MILDMAY Hospital Uganda supporting Safe Motherhood. That is going to be the niche of our conversation this morning. Now, I am joined by experts with me here in studio to help us understand where we stand as far as Safe Motherhood is concerned. Given the fact that as a country we have moved leaps and bounds to improve our health sector, but then again the statistics seem to be worsening instead of improving, and so perhaps we will be hearing from the doctors in the house why this is the status. We do have Dr. Ndozire Katali Jr. Good morning to you, doctor.
Good morning, Priscilla.
And how are you?
Very good, thank you.
Could you give us your full introduction?
Yes, I'm Dr. Ndozire Katali Jr. I'm an obstetrician and gynecologist at MILDMAY Uganda Hospital. I'm delighted to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. And then next to him we do have Dr. Juliana Kayaga. She's also with MILDMAY Uganda. Good morning to you, doctor.
Good morning, Priscilla.
Nice to have you.
Nice to be here. Thank you for having us.
And under what capacity are you here with us this morning?
So I'm Juliana Kayaga, and I'm a pediatrician at MILDMAY Uganda Hospital. I also lead the team that offers the pediatric and adolescent services at the hospital.
Okay. Yeah. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank
and
you.
Of course, we do have Mr. Tadeo Atuhura, who's also with MILDMAY, constantly helping our communities on the ground to better understand health statuses. Good morning to you, Mr. Tadeo.
Good morning, Priscilla, and a great morning to the viewers. We're excited to be here. I'm from MILDMAY Uganda. I lead communications at MILDMAY.
Now, speaking of leading communications at MILDMAY, we want to first understand, with MILDMAY Hospital Uganda, why have you given so much attention to Safe Motherhood?
Okay. Thank you so much. First and foremost, we're excited to be here. As a team, this month, MILDMAY Uganda celebrates 25 years of our existence since 1998. The hospital is just one of the key entities of MILDMAY Uganda. We have got the research center, we have got the MILDMAY Institute of Health Sciences, we've got the MILDMAY, the one that's about transforming the communities, but at the same time the hospital. Now, why the hospital? Talking about Safe Motherhood. Safe Motherhood is really cutting across. MILDMAY Uganda's key vision is to ensure that communities are transformed for sustainable health. So Safe Motherhood is just one of it that we focus on. And why are we focusing on it right now? For a long time, 25 years, we, I think, have a lot of experience in terms of health, even looking at how our research component works. So, and we realize that there's so many of these numbers that can be brought down if at all Safe Motherhood is actually handled. Now, the biggest part is under that Safe Motherhood is the families. We have a family-centered model in terms of our approach to care, and therefore we realize that if these are closed at family level, so for instance the men are involved, the women are involved, the children are involved, those that support care are also involved, then we are going to have safety across. Our biggest mandate is to ensure that there are lives that are saved. So across the spectrum of MILDMAY Uganda profile, we're looking at from the hospital, those that come to the hospital, because the biggest percentage of the people that come to the hospital come because there is somehow, somewhere failure within the community dynamics. But if you come to the hospital, you should be able to get the care that you need. But also if you are within the community, there are preventative measures that we also look at. But also we go further to ensure that we train health workers that can manage this as well. And then we also do research around the health aspect. So while we're coming up with this, we realize that it's a very core aspect for us. Of course, the partnerships that we have in the Ministry of Health and the other stakeholders, it's one of the critical areas that we need to address. You've just read the numbers there that we have in terms of how really our maternal health is standing. And so the little contribution from MILDMAY Uganda, even as we celebrate the 25 years, is to be able to look at this and then create sensitization and awareness around it. Now, Priscilla, some of the basic things may look to be very small. Like, for instance, antenatal care, attendance to antenatal care. It looks to be very basic. Every mother is supposed to go and access antenatal care up to around 4 to 5 times. But they should be supported by the spouse, the husband, coming in and maybe giving transport. Some cases we've realized that actually the men do not even get to know the delivery date when the mother will deliver. They are just invited to be told that your wife has delivered. So the discussion around those basic things, creating awareness around those things, delivering at the health facility, a healthcare provider that you meet that is qualified, they mean a lot, because we don't want to lose babies. We don't want to lose lives. So that's the whole purpose why, as an institution, we come up to address this issue.
Dr. Ndozire, I know that in your capacity and in your field, it's the starting place really for any person who's interested in being a mother and embarking on that journey of motherhood. From your experience and interactions with the mothers that have crossed through your office, what is their perception on safe motherhood? Do they understand what entails safe motherhood?
All right, thank you very much. Safe motherhood, when we talk about safe motherhood, we are looking at the mother, and then she's going through her reproductive period safely. Now, the reproductive period has a lot of issues that come around it. Some of them are affected by the economic situations, others political situations, but most of them are really medical, and we can't really manage them. So when we talk about safe motherhood, it's the mother. And where the mother begins is in childhood, really. Yes. Then we talk about her bringing a baby. And then how is this baby going to be? Okay. So when we talk about safe motherhood, we start from childhood. How are we feeding? Now that's Dr. Juliana's area, how the children feed. Then we talk about delaying to conceive until you are ready to conceive. Now, for you to delay to conceive, you must plan. That's where the word family planning comes in. It's really contraception. If you are not ready to have a child, do not get pregnant. And for you to know that you are ready, you must be economically ready to have a child. You must be politically ready to have a child. Because if you bring a child, if you get pregnant and you're not ready, you're likely to have complications. Now, when you get pregnant, when you're now ready to get pregnant, we are saying come to hospital as early as possible. The reason we want you to come as early as possible is there are complications that we can look out for and manage so that you can have a safe journey throughout your pregnancy. Then during labor, there are also complications that we need to manage there. So we need you to attend antenatal so that we can know this mother is likely to have postpartum hemorrhage, which is one of the biggest causes of maternal deaths that we talked about. And apart from the maternal deaths, there are also complications that women live with because of childbearing. So those are what we call the morbidities. They might not die, but they can live with a condition that came as a result of having a complication of pregnancy. So safe motherhood, we want to mitigate all these complications that we can. Then we have the postpartum period. That's you've delivered safely, or you've had some complications, we've managed them. We need to monitor you throughout the postpartum period. And during that monitoring, we also want the baby to be monitored. Then we have women who get abortions. Abortion is, the society thinks when you talk about an abortion, the woman has procured the abortion. But there are abortions that are spontaneous, and there are women who are having these that are recurrent. So we want to be able to manage these women both psychologically and medically. Then we want to link them to HIV/AIDS care, and then sexually transmitted infection treatments and all. So when we talk about safe motherhood, it's a whole spectrum from childhood until someone brings a baby into life, and then how that baby fares.
Okay,
Yes.
so we have talked about the safe place for motherhood, we have talked about safe motherhood, but now let's talk about the child themselves that is being referred to here. Dr. Kayaga, at what point should mothers and the communities at large be considerate of the pediatrics element of this conversation? Because in society today, it's only considered when a child has started development, have gotten a certain complication, have gone to a general doctor, and then the general doctor, if wise enough, can refer them to the pediatrics office, of which it's not common to many hospitals here in Uganda. And so at what point should that conversation start to ensure that there's safe motherhood?
Thank you, Priscilla. So I would like to introduce the concept. I think many people out there might know it, but I would like for our viewers who might not know to introduce the concept of the first 1,000 days. The first 1,000 days are I would say, the most important period of a child's life. And these actually begin not from birth, as many people think, but actually begin from conception. So when we talk about the first 1,000 days, we're talking about the day you were conceived in your mother's womb up to your second birthday. So until the child is 24 months. That period is very crucial. And it's the time where we lay the most, optimum health benefits for the child. And also we develop during that time is when we develop and sort of set the foundation for this child's life as they will be, you know, for their health, yeah? It is set in those first 1,000 days. And so why I've talked about the 1,000 days is to go back to conception to say that a child's health begins from the mother. So a healthy mom, that is the first step to having a healthy baby. So actually not even a healthy mother, but a healthy lady. Yeah. So before you even conceive, you're in the best health, you have all the nutrients, you eat a balanced diet, you're keeping away from many lifestyle diseases and all that. So when a baby is conceived by a healthy mother, they're more likely to be a healthy fetus and eventually develop into a healthy baby. So the conversation should actually begin with the mother, to sort of answer your question. But then again, after now the baby has come, what are the things that we have to do? Of course, Dr. Ndozeri, I think, hinted on it. We always want the baby to be delivered by a skilled birth attendant in a hospital, preferably, and in a big hospital, especially if there might have been some things that were identified during the antenatal period. We want you to come to a big hospital. And that is because if there are complications that may happen during that time that can be prevented or that can be managed very quickly. In Uganda, about a quarter of the babies die in the newborn period, that is in the first 1 month. And many of these deaths are contributed to by things like asphyxia. Asphyxia is when the baby doesn't have enough oxygen during delivery. And many of these happen when people are not attended to by skilled birth attendants. And then they also get infections as newborns, and these also happen in, if they're delivered in dingy places. So that time is also very crucial. And so we say, come to the hospital, deliver at a hospital where you will receive the best possible care, where you'll be able to prevent infections and all that. So if a baby is delivered at with a skilled birth attendant, they're less likely to suffer these complications that lead to death. Yeah. We then talk about the period that follows. One of the most important things about child health is the nutrition. So you find that in Uganda, about 50% of deaths actually related to malnutrition in one way or the other. It might be the direct cause or somehow present, together with other things. But also when you have a child that is not well nourished and stunted, the effects are lifelong. So a stunted child will not have good brain development, will not be able to reach their maximum height as according to their genetic potential, and then they'll also have other lifestyle diseases, yeah? And these effects actually also even affect their ability to get out of poverty. So the effects are lifelong, and so we want to start them as early as possible. One of the core pillars of nutrition in children is breastfeeding. And last month we just concluded, we had a breastfeeding week. I hope that NTV really talked about it. Yes. But breastfeeding is very important. We find that babies that are breastfed exclusively for the first 6 months are 14 times more likely to survive than those who are not. Yeah. And the World Health Organization actually recommends that we breastfeed for the first 6 months exclusively, meaning breast alone. And then after that, we'll introduce other foods, but continue to breastfeed up to 2 years. You can go beyond, you know, but at least give the first 2 years, yeah? So once breastfeeding is done, the benefits really are so many. There are benefits to the mother, there are benefits to the baby, there are benefits to the society as a whole. And this is something maybe that you went through already, and because of time I may not be able to go into deep detail. Additionally, we also have to have the right complementary feeding. Complementary feeding means that while you're breastfeeding, the foods that you add on. When we talk about milk, people think that a baby only takes milk, but when they get to 6 months, they now need to take in other foods.
Start the weaning process.
They have to take in other foods, and these really help them to develop, or, you know, to have all the nutrients that they need for their development, and it's very important. So nutrition is really a core factor in child health.
Because that's true, and I think that's a conversation we'll come back to, because I've seen cases where mothers are going to feed the child on, you know, mashed potato for a while, and yet there's other deficiencies. I'm also meant to understand that as the child starts their development journey, they start losing some of the nutrients that they started with at birth. Is that the case?
So they don't necessarily lose the nutrients, but they don't have enough. Yeah, so you find that when a baby is newborn, the nutrients that are in the breast milk are enough for everything. But as they continue to grow, maybe even from 4 months, 5 months, we find things like iron are not enough anymore, and iron is very important for brain development. We find things like the vitamin D and other nutrients. That's why we talk about now you need to supplement and add, you know, because the breast milk at this point cannot supply everything that this baby needs. Okay.
So clearly there could be a gap within motherhood in terms of information on nutrition, so as to better raise children, that as far as nutrition are concerned, they do have a tick. I do know that the government has taken serious consideration of programs like immunization for children, and so there's a program, there's a chart, and for every hospital clinic they must be conducting these ever so often. What is the equivalent as far as nutrition is concerned, and ensuring that the children in Uganda are raised with consideration of good nutrition habits and health?
Yeah, so in Uganda we actually have a Ministry of Health policy. We have the Uganda National Nutrition Plan that really outlines and gives guidance on nutrition services and how to assess children for nutrition deficiencies, how to manage them, where to take them, who you can manage where. But also at different hospitals, for example at MILDMAY, we have nutritionists that give mothers classes when they come in during their antenatal care. So we teach them how they should treat themselves as they are pregnant. But then also we begin to prepare the process of when the baby comes, how then do we support them in this nutrition journey for that baby. And of course, it's also very important to know that it's not a one-off, this is a process that you work with parents and also with children. So every time they come for, you've talked about immunization, every time they come in for an immunization, we also use this opportunity to assess nutrition. How is the baby growing? And if they're not growing, we then look into what might be the problems and how can we support these mothers. So it's actually an important journey that we always have to work with them all the way from antenatal care and as the child also begins to grow.
Okay, then let's turn to Mr. Tadeo. When you are designing the different elements of, safe motherhood at MILDMAY Hospital Uganda, how have you designed it in such a way that it should be inclusive of nutrition, starting with the mother, as Dr. Julian had mentioned?
Yeah, just like what we talked about in terms of family-centered approach to care, our approach to everything that we do rotates around the family. And so even the things that we're talking about, nutrition is a very big component that lies on a decision within the family. I've seen also situations whereby the decision is made that eggs, things that are really very important for nutrition of children, are given to adults. There's a decision-making level. And our entry point is that we engage the families to understand, first of all, what is their role? What's the role of the mother? Dr. Ndozire mentioned something very fundamental. Before you conceive, are you really ready to have this child? But also, where are you going to have the child? And sometimes that is a decision that should be made by both the partners. You have the couple to decide. But also there's a question of how many children, because that's also very important. We've seen situations whereby a mother wakes up, today they're pregnant, just after a short while they become pregnant again. It's just rotation throughout. And then we know that the body is supposed to at least gain for them to be ready for another child. So our approach has been, we engage the community. We engage the community systems and structures about all these aspects of health, not only nutrition, because there are also others. The biggest percentage of the people know that MILDMAY is about HIV. We do understand that HIV is also very critical in this particular area of discussion. But there are others that are really very involved. And so we engage at the community level. But also we move further, because after realizing the long time we've been engaging with the communities, we realize they need to have a very qualified healthcare provider. That's why we have the MILDMAY Uganda Hospital. Although from the inception it was much more of let's be able to address HIV. Yes, we still do address HIV, and all our patients can continue to come and access care. But right now the hospital is providing beyond HIV. So come to the hospital, get a very qualified provider. Now, Priscilla, you realize that sometimes people become pregnant in the communities, they don't go for antenatal care, and deliver from the traditional birth attendant. Now, they don't know whether it is really that dangerous for you to do that. And we've seen very, very really sad stories where somebody is delivering in a banana plantation, for instance. The care is very limited. Delivering twins, you see, there are all these misconceptions around that. And sometimes the mother ends up dying. Now, by the time they realize that there is a problem, that's when they say, let's go to the hospital. And by the time they reach the hospital, it's too late. The mother actually just dies. And so it's also very important to have a very qualified care provider. But also, does this healthcare provider know what to do in terms of engaging the mother? Because I know many of the mothers can come to the health facility, but do they interface with the healthcare provider who is grounded with this old kind of information? And so our approach has been, let's work with the communities, build their capacities. Let's close onto the human resources for health gap through training, tailored training, but also continuously make sure that we are finding out evidence. Let's do research. How far is this moving? In the healthcare pillar, one of the things that we've realized, men don't want to get tested for HIV, and they don't want to go and access care. We've seen situations in the up country, the communities we work with, where the husband says, once my wife brings back results, I will know my status. If she's positive, then we are all positive. If she's negative, then we are all negative.
So the result is for two.
Exactly. So
one person's blood is for two.
And we were struggling with how can we bring men on board? How can we have men come and join in? I know the doctors here also struggling to have men come for antenatal, come and escort their partners for antenatal, because there are some of those discussions that must happen. A lady comes to the hospital, you talk to them, they understand what is important for them, but to go back and convince the husband.
And it's a decision that
to
has
make
to be
a decision,
made by two.
Yes. sometimes it becomes a little bit tricky. So that's why we have got programs at the hospital. If you come and you've escorted your partner, we give you priority. But also the education perspective part of it. That in terms of nutrition, you invite the wife, you invite the husband, sit them down. Our nutrition groups demonstrate that actually these foods are available. How can you be able to have them on table? The other critical aspect is that the decision making. I can come and I'm pregnant at the hospital, but then my husband doesn't want that hospital. Maybe wants me to deliver from another hospital. And I have a marriage to protect, Priscilla. So beyond the child, beyond the pregnancy, I have got a marriage to protect. So I go back and tell my husband, what do we do? He says, no, you can't go to hospital, you deliver from here. I will automatically deliver from there. Not because I want, or not because I don't have the information, but there is another person who is making the decision. So in terms of safe motherhood, and our entrance, and our work as MILDMAY, one is to create awareness. Number two, build the structures. Work with the community structures to ensure that this happens. But also contribute to the bigger dialogue in terms of discussion. Just like this one, how do we make sure that we prioritize it? We appreciate so much Ministry of Health. They've done really a lot. You have the messaging around nutrition, immunization, and all that. But now taking it down to the people to make a decision. That's why we want this connection where a mother outside there watches the show and says, I can talk to Dr. Kayaga, I can talk to Dr. Junior, and then they can be able to help. Sometimes, Priscilla, it's about where do you go?
Okay.
Yes.
You have mentioned something about traditional birth attendants. Those are common, pretty much, especially in the rural places. But in the urban centers, people have adopted different forms of births, home births, Benson births, and these are becoming quite, popular within the elite class of society. How do you mitigate that form of adaptation to safe motherhood, because they feel that this is safer? Of course, they've done their research to come up with that decision, and the decision takes two people, and so if they have decided that that's what they want, Dr. Ndozire, how do we ensure that there's safe motherhood, nevertheless, if they want it from the hospital or if they insist to have it from the place of their comfort and choice?
Thank you. Of course, as our society advances in technology and knowledge, we adopt some things that that are convenient for us. In developed countries, it's possible to have a home delivery, and you have a nurse around. You have an ambulance ready to take you to hospital in case you need, in case you get an emergency that needs theater. The hospital is like 5 minutes away from you.
Right.
Yes.
True.
So now, before you attempt to do a home delivery, you need to have a plan, a whole plan, in case you start bleeding. Because we said postpartum hemorrhage, which is bleeding after you've delivered, is the commonest cause of death in women. In case you start bleeding, you have around 4 minutes for everything to be done, for you to be dead. Because one, the placenta, where the uterus, a pregnant uterus, carries around 25% of all the blood that you have every minute. So if you started bleeding and it's major bleeding, you're going to die very fast. So before we start attempting some of these things, we have what we call the delays, the first, second, and third delays. The first delay is you delay to make the decision that, well, do you have a person who is skilled to know that this is actually a problem, we need to go to hospital? That's one. So that's where the delay to make the decision to come to hospital is. Then number two, when you decide to come to hospital, there are people who delay on the road. You find traffic jam. You find that the roads are really bad and you can't get to hospital on time. Do you have the vehicles to bring you to hospital? Do you have an ambulance, for example? So that's the second delay. The third delay is when you reach the hospital. The hospital that you have gone to, do they have the capacity to manage the problem? So home delivery is a very convenient bathtubs, and you have your whole family around. It's a whole nice experience, but it must be put in context in our setting. We still have the first and second delays. Our road transport is really bad. We still have, Tadeo talked about men. Men make all the decisions in our homes, financial decisions, where you deliver from, which doctor you see, and all those things. And the women listen because it is the man providing.
You have to submit.
Yes. Yeah, and the Bible says you must submit. So they do that. So if the man is not involved, that is also going to create another delay. So home deliveries, they are nice, but in our setting, we need to do them in context.
Okay.
You must have a hospital backup for you, because you will get a problem, and then if you don't have a hospital, you don't have an ambulance ready for you, you don't have a nurse or a skilled obstetrician or a medical officer with you, you might end up having a death or a complication that is long-lasting.
Okay, let's talk about Summer. You did talk about the hemorrhage, and I know that it's one of the major causes of death as far as UNICEF is concerned. There are quite a number of other, contributing factors, though, to why women end up dying to childbirth. Could you talk to us about that?
Yes, so we have a number of causes. When we talk about maternal mortality or death of a mother during or after pregnancy, there are many causes. So we grade them according to the frequency, the commonest. So the commonest is hemorrhage. Hemorrhage can happen. Hemorrhage is bleeding. Bleeding can happen before you deliver or after you deliver. The commonest is when you've just delivered. So before you deliver, you can have what we call placenta previa. That's a placenta that has not attached well in the uterus. It's around the cervix. So when the cervix starts opening, you'll start bleeding, because the placenta is what holds all the blood that feeds the baby. So that's one of the causes. The other one is if the placenta separates before time. That causes bleeding before. And when that happens, either the baby dies or the mother dies, and then the baby will die later. So postpartum hemorrhage, you've just delivered, there are many causes there. The uterus doesn't contract very well, you start bleeding. Now the other causes, we have hypertensive disorders of pregnancy. Hypertensive disorders we call them preeclampsia, eclampsia. Because people have been hearing these, they know what these are. These, we can manage them before they cause a problem. That's why we say, before you conceive, do you have risk factors? There are things that put you at risk of having this pregnancy-induced hypertension. So we manage those conditions before you get pregnant. Then when you get pregnant and it comes, we must have facilities to manage you. We give you antihypertensives, we give you medicines to prevent you from convulsing, and then if this is not done, then you'll end up with organ damage. Your brain can get an issue, get a stroke, your kidneys will die, you get issues with the liver as well. So hypertensive disorders is the next after hemorrhage. Then we have complications of sepsis. Sepsis is you get an infection that is overwhelming, and then it damages your organs and other things. So that is another cause. Then the others are abortions. As I told you, abortions, in Uganda, our laws are very restrictive about abortions. A woman cannot walk in a hospital and procure an abortion if they want to, because of our law system. And that is not going to change anytime soon. So what people resort to is going to clandestine areas. You find a health worker, they take you and perform an abortion. But this also comes with complications, because the environment where this is happening is unsafe. Or most of these women will go to their grandparents or some woman in the village, a traditional birth attendant, and they will insert things that are likely to perforate the uterus or cause overwhelming infection. And so abortions comes in line there on the other causes of deaths, because most of these women will not come on time. They'll come late. By the time they come, we can't really do much. And then we have other things, other conditions like HIV, AIDS. Then we have malaria in pregnancy, diabetes, and other causes that are related to pregnancy that cause maternal deaths.
Okay.
All these can be identified and managed if a mother comes for antenatal.
Okay, so then it begs the question, what are the fundamental aspects that a family or a couple should have in consideration from conception to post-delivery for safe motherhood?
So one, it starts by knowing when do I want to conceive, so you must do preconception care. Preconception care is an idea that most people are not aware of, but we should plan to have babies. In Africa, I think we just realize we are pregnant.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be in Kabale and start pre-planning.
Yeah.
The weather in Kabale is conducive enough for many babies.
Yes, but that gives you a disadvantage. For example, if you have sickle cell disease, you need to be optimized before you get pregnant, because sickle cell disease affects the pregnancy, but as well the pregnancy affects the progression of sickle cell disease. So, or if you have diabetes, for example, and you just conceive, then you're at risk of high blood pressure.
I know someone who was diabetic, and they spent pretty much 8 months in hospital.
Exactly.
Back and forth, back and forth.
So the issue of preconception care is very important. Plan, come to hospital and have a number of tests done. Then say, maybe I want to conceive next year. Then we optimize you, we give you folic acid to prevent the baby from getting some defects on the spine, you know. And then build up your blood levels. We have, our population has anemia. A lot of anemia because of nutrition and also because of worms. Yeah, so you need to have all these managed before you can think of having a baby. We want a safe baby. We want a safe mother. We want a baby who is healthy as well. So preconception care. Then when you conceive, when you realize that I have conceived, then that is your chance to come to hospital. Because there are things that we do in antenatal that one will look out for some of the issues that were missed during the preconception care, and then we manage them before it is too late. But also we need to know, is this a normal pregnancy that you're having? Are you having a multiple pregnancy? Is your pregnancy in the right place? Because we have had what we call ectopic pregnancies, and they cause a lot of morbidities. Yes. So we need to know all these things as early as possible so that we can manage you. Then you go through the antenatal. WHO advises that a woman should have at least 8 antenatal visits for her to have a good experience of pregnancy. And during all this time, we are looking out for your blood pressure, we are checking your weight, because we have what we call abnormal weight gain in pregnancy as well. If you gain a lot of weight, it's likely to cause you issues as well. During delivery or even after you've delivered. Then we look out for conditions that are likely to complicate your pregnancy or even the pregnancy itself. So we monitor, at least we do an ultrasound. Now that's where the men come in. If a man is not around, the woman will say, I don't have the money to do an ultrasound scan. You know, and then, you know, you might miss something that you could have done. Then when we go through the antenatal period, we plan the delivery. There are women who should not deliver in certain facilities because the facilities do not have the equipment, the technology, the expertise to manage certain conditions. For example, if we think you might have a preterm baby, you should deliver in a place where they can take care of the preterm baby. A place should have a NICU and pediatricians and neonatologists where they can manage your baby. So all these things are planned during the antenatal visits.
Okay, all right. Now let's go back to the nutritional aspect, Dr. Kayaga. You talked about the pillars of nutrition. What are those pillars of nutrition that should be under critical consideration in regards to safe motherhood, and how can we ensure that the child comes out healthy and has a sustainable health lifestyle?
Okay, so I think just going back to what we mentioned, Priscilla, was that we need a healthy mom for a healthy baby. And so, like Dr. Ndozeri has said, come into hospital even before you get pregnant. We may pick up things that are deficient that we can then manage before you actually now think of conceiving. Yeah. For instance, there are certain conditions that may be associated with a child coming out with defects. For instance, if a mother does not have enough folic acid in their body, the child can come out with the spine defects. I don't know if you've heard of spina bifida, or having a really big head. And these are complications that can simply be prevented by making sure the mother is, very healthy. So it's very important, again, like I think we are mentioning, contact with the health workers, contact with skilled health workers is very important. So from that time, we'll then have a healthy mom. Once the baby comes, again, the message of breastfeeding can never be told enough. We make sure this baby is breastfed. When we come to complementary feeding, again, we want you to be in touch with us because we want to tell you the things that you should give. I think earlier on in the show you talked about mashed potato, mashed potato, mashed potato. There are things that are really popular and people think they are the healthiest foods, and they might be good for the baby, but not by themselves, okay? So we have to have nutrition education for mothers, and it's a journey. At first, when the baby has just been born, my message will be breastfeed, breastfeed. How do I support you to breastfeed? As the baby grows older, then I'll start talking about the other forms of nutrition. So nutrition education for the mothers, to know what foods to complement this baby with. But then also as they go into, as the children continue to grow, a very big pillar of nutrition is the monitoring. Because we may think that we're telling you to do the right thing, or you may think you're doing the right thing, but the baby is not actually showing us.
Speaking of that, in regards to self-medication, there's self-referrals, I've given birth, so my experience, I share it with you, and then you adopt the same style or same elements of taking care of our children. And I believe that somehow has distorted because each child is different, right from the genetics of it, it's different. So you can't apply what I have used onto your own child. How are you mitigating that particular issue? Because it's very common among moms. Hey, I know, but even so and so gave birth. It was really just do this and that.
Actually, Priscilla, the biggest culprits of these are grandmothers. Because many times when people give birth, especially in our society, she goes home to her mom, and then, if my mom raised me, she's definitely a big authority on all things nutrition, child health, and all that. But how to mitigate this, again, like I said, just really educate. To educate. If you have contact with the health workers, we'll educate you on the right things to do. Many times grandmothers and aunties and what may have some, home remedies and advice that is good, and we love them, and we love to have them supporting our mothers, because many times people need help and their support is very important. But in terms of the accurate messages that we want for the child's optimum health, child's optimum nutrition, this is something that we want to give you as health workers. So every time, Dr. Ndozeri talked about WHO increased the number of antenatal visits. Previously there were 4, now there are 8. And so we want to meet you almost every month during your pregnancy. So we can talk, and tell you more and give you a chance to ask questions. You will go back, ask your mom, but they told me this. Next month you'll come back and you'll say, no, this is actually, that kind of thing. So education really is the only way to mitigate such practices, but indeed they're very common.
Okay, all right. And then what's your message to mothers, especially when it comes to consultation? They feel like, especially first-time mothers, it's they're caught between a rock and a hard place as far as consultations are concerned. So when they come into your space, how do you help them to appreciate that they need to be as educated as possible in raising a healthy child?
Yeah, I think you bring up a very important point, and I don't think that many times these mothers don't want to consult. They don't know that they should consult. That's usually the biggest problem. And that then comes back to us as the health workers, in that whenever someone comes to us, we take lead. Sometimes someone comes to you and you ask them, how is the baby? And they say, baby's fine, baby's okay. But baby doesn't look fine to you as a health worker, or baby might look fine, but then if you go ahead to take lead in asking, you know, the right questions, you will find that no, actually this baby doesn't poop, you know, as regularly as they should, or doesn't do this as regularly as they should, or actually hasn't put on weight in the last 1 month. First-time moms generally suffer with a lot of lack of information, not knowing what to do, and so this is something that really comes back to us as health workers. And this is why we say that health hospital visits shouldn't only be for sick babies. You can also come in for a well visit. You know, we're fine, but is everything going well? Because you may not always know. We use immunization as our sort of way of getting these babies in to come in for the well visits. Because many times people will not see a reason to come in. So when they come for immunization, we also do the monitoring and But many times the consultation might actually have to be health worker led, for us to actually let them know that no, this is not right. Even if you think the baby is fine, if they're getting to 6 months, you're probably going to start another type of feeding. Come in, let's talk, let's monitor, let's see how the baby is growing, and that would be very important.
Okay. All right. As we come to the Crown News conversation, Mr. Tuhura, you've been very, very eloquent on men's involvement in this conversation. As MILDMAY Hospital Uganda, how are you actually practically pushing for men in our society to be a part of these journeys? Because at the end of the day, they are contributing factors, not just financially, but emotionally, the support. And even them themselves being in the room, it helps not just the mother, but even the child. There's, you know, that attachment and the bonding that we talked about. And then also, in conclusion, access to the right kind of health services to ensure that there's safe motherhood for Uganda.
Oh, thank you so much, Priscilla. And I will still even on this platform advocate for men. Every man out there, please, if you've not been escorting your wife to the hospital for anything, even immunization, anything, please, it's great that you're able to take it up. Now, from the hospital perspective, you know, men like corporate things, like simple things, like things that will engage them. As a hospital, we have all healthcare providers in terms of insurance. So for the insurance, you can only walk into the hospital with any. It could be Sanlam, it could be AR, it could be a GA, it could be Jubilee. You can walk into the hospital and get services. But also in terms of the timelines, really, we have a quick turnaround time of our service and care. I know men, they normally come for health care when they are looking at the watch. The time, immunization is taking a long time. Why? So we normally have a quick turnaround time, which is professional. And so you're able to come and pick the service very quickly. But also the other aspect is the engagement. It's the engagement. When you come and don't find the healthcare providers that are specialized, there is a challenge. At the hospital, we have got really specialized experts. Dr. Junior heads quite a very big team. And so when they come, they are asking questions. Recently, they have been asking questions around DNA. That's for men. And so when you come at the hospital, you're able to really get attended to. But also the most important thing is that men want to have as much information as possible. And so we have put up platforms where we can engage men in terms of the information they want. But also they are so mindful about the cost. How much is it costing me? And so when you look at costs of healthcare in this country, they're a little bit high. But when you come to MILDMAY Uganda Hospital, you'll be able to get really the appropriate cost of the healthcare. When you look at what you get vis-a-vis how much it would cost, you realize that actually you're getting what is worth. So we also worked around that to ensure that every person comes. And lastly is about family approach to care. MILDMAY Hospital Uganda, I have seen, is the only hospital where you have a family welcomed, that every person feels happy. I have seen people come park, the child runs to go to the swings, the mother is running to do this, the father is catered for. So everyone is really part of, but also the atmosphere. The other day I told Priscilla to come and visit. I invited her, but of course I don't think she has visited. The ambience itself makes you feel that this is the family. But beyond that, is that we need to make sure that we're talking about this over and over and over for people to be able to make an informed choice, but also informed decision, but also to understand that it's very crucial. I just don't have to see my wife go to the hospital and wait for results. HIV is still available, and we appreciate all efforts across ministry, PEPFAR, CDC. A lot has been done to make sure that you're able to now, even if you tested today and you are found positive, you can be able to enroll into care. You know,
all right.
quickly,
So where is the hospital found for those that don't know where to get to the hospital? Our
hospital is found along Lueza on Entebbe Road, and it's once you reach the Felix, just you'll be able to see the hospital. But in case still you want to find out and ask, you can still call 0200 99 45 41, and then you can be able to reach out, or you go to our social media platforms. We'll be able to help you, and we're 24 hours, so every time you come in, we can be able to support you.
Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Kayaga, your closing remarks, what's your call to action to ensure that there's supportive, safe motherhood to our nation?
I think that what I would say is that the journey, I would speak of course for the child, being a pediatrician is always my interest, but the journey of a healthy child begins with a healthy mother. And this is something that we must always remember as moms, that if you're thinking about having a child who will grow up to be maybe president of Uganda, you should be a healthy mom to be able to produce a child that will be healthy and productive. I think the other thing would be that let's keep in touch. Let society keep in touch with the health workers. We're here to support you, and it's a journey, and we can walk with you all the way through. It shouldn't be a one-off, but we can always walk with you through the entire journey. Yeah, I think those would be my two main points.
Okay, and then finally, your call to action, Dr. Ndazire Jr.
One is that every maternal death can be prevented. At least most of them can be prevented. And how we do this is we need to engage with skilled personnel, with a hospital that provides most of these. So the mothers out there, before you decide to conceive, come to hospital and have a checkup done, so that we know if you'll be able to conceive and go through a pregnancy safely. Then when you conceive, come to hospital and run tests, see the health workers, the nutrition, and then during the delivery we can prevent most of these complications that come with delivery. So come to hospital and meet experts. Yes. Okay. And the men out there, please get involved. Don't wait for you to be called that your baby has been delivered, it's a baby boy. Be there when the baby comes. Put on a suit so that the baby is impressive. Baby boy or baby girl. So be involved basically, be around, and the mothers feel good when the husbands are around because they know he's into this.
Well, it's been a pleasure hearing your schools of expertise. They're not thoughts, they're expertise. And we want to say thank you so much to MILDMAY Uganda that they have put in as much research and have been intentional in ensuring that in the next 25 years as a nation, we cut down on these numbers. As Dr. Ndazire has said, every death of a mother and a child is actually preventable if we can go through the things and abide by the recommendations that have been shared with us this morning for a transformative community. We must ensure that the Uganda of tomorrow is protected today through safe motherhood. Well, this program and discussions have been brought to you by MILDMAY Uganda, who do have the MILDMAY Hospital here in Uganda. It is on Entebbe Road, and they do offer you every single service, right from HIV. Then when it comes to the experts, the team leads that they have here, they've shared with us, that's the pediatrics and also the gynecology. You also get to see that they are focusing on all elements of a healthy society. So make sure that you actually take in the expertise and appreciate the skills that have been provided for under the health sector to ensure that we have a safe nation for the future. This brings us to the close of this dialogue, and you can turn to our social media platforms for some of the pointers and recommendations, and that is on NTV Uganda. I remain Priscilla Regina Deluga. Good afternoon.